from Royal Communications Incorporated. Good evening and welcome to King's News Broom 45 minutes news about Liberia, Africa, and our one world. Today is Tuesday, February 3, 2026, and I'm Shemo Dia presenting. In the headlines, dozens of citizens to be displaced Wednesday ends on the 2nd as government enforces demolition in the area to reclaim armed forces of Liberia land. But Monserrado County District 5 Representative Priscilla Cooper expressed disappointment and called for citizens' fair treatment. The Finance and Development Planning Minister Augustine Gafford lied about reversing harmonization. Former Finance Minister Samuel Tuwe says LACC and GSC salaries were never harmonized as claimed by Gafford. And also in the news tonight, say town mass demolition victims petition national legislature for intervention. Accused Monserrado County District 8 Representative Prince Tall of taking bribe from businessman Eric Nangbe to enforce the demolition. Away from home, Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has hit out at Eritrea's army for committing atrocities during the 2-year war in the North Tigray region, which ended in 2022. Former U.S. President Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State, have agreed to testify in a congressional investigation late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. These plus the news bulletin, voices of those making the news at all package. We'll take a short break to be right back. Welcome back at this juncture with John Sam Andrews with the news bulletin.
Tensions are mounting as the government of Liberia through the armed forces of Liberia is expected to carry on its eviction at the 72nd Military Barracks, commonly known as Camp Ramrod, as residents occupying the area vow to resist any demolition efforts by the government, despite renewed evacuation order issued by the Ministry of National Defense. The ministry on January 19th issued its 14-day ultimatum for all illegal occupants to vacate the barracks or risk eviction. In a release, the ministry described the ultimatum as a final 14-day for all illegal occupants. The directive comes as AFL prepares to reclaim the facility for military rehabilitation and expansion, a move authorities say is critical to national security. However, the residents who lived in the area for years say they would not leave without what they considered fair relocation arrangements. Meanwhile, Monserrado County Representative Priscilla Cooper has expressed total disappointment in the government's handling of the 72nd Military Barracks and residents' land issues, which is expected to make dozens of citizens homeless. She expressed the disappointment Tuesday after her communication, which called on the plenary of the House of Representatives to cite authorities of the Ministry of National Defense and the Armed Forces of Liberia, was dismissed. Addressing reporters, Representative Priscilla Cooper warned government against downplaying the dignity of Liberians in land matters, noting that land issues must be dealt with properly, using all procedures to ensure that everyone involved is respected and given good treatment. The Monserrado County representative also wants the government establish the facts in the 72nd Barracks and resident land dispute. The Liberian government has since announced that structures believed to be on the properties of the armed forces of Liberia at the 72nd Barracks will be demolished, giving the occupants 14 days to vacate the premises effective January 19th. Following the announcement, there has been serious concerns about displacement, with residents of the area and activists calling for dialogue and compensation for affected individuals. Former Finance and Development Planning Minister Samuel Tuwe has sharply criticized the current Minister of Finance, Augustin Gafuan, over his recent claims of the government of Liberia reversing harmonization for key government institutions. On Monday, during an appearance on an online show through government by government officials, Minister Gafuan noted that the government has reversed the harmonization of the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission, the General Auditing Commission, the Chief Justice and Associate Justices, including judges at the Temple of Justice. He also named employees at the Liberia Drug Enforcement Agency, adding that the government is reversing harmonization gingerly. However, in a detailed policy rebuttal, former Minister Toy argued that key integrity institutions, specifically the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission and the General Auditing Commission salaries, were never harmonized in the sense implied by Minister Gafuan. According to Toy, those institutions already operated under a single pay system prior to the harmonization reforms, describing the claim as technically flawed and politically misleading. He added, as integrity institutions, LACC and GAC were not subject to the same control as over 100 entities under the central government. Samuel 12 further challenged the administration framing of salary adjustments as a reversal of deharmonization, stressing that reversing harmonization is fundamentally different from increasing wages. The former finance minister noted that the true reversal of harmonization will require reinstating the dual compensation structure of basic salary and general allowance, a system the reform explicitly abolished. Several victims of Satan mass demolition have petitioned the national legislature to urgently intervene in what they described as unfair destruction of their properties following a recent court ruling. The demolition, which resulted to the loss of homes, worship centers, businesses, among others, have sparked major concerns, as many have accused the government of playing blind-eyed. The affected residents are also accusing Montserrado County District 8 Representative Prince Toll of allegedly accepting bribe from businessman Eric Nangwe to facilitate enforcement of the court's order. Reading the petition at the Capitol building Tuesday, the spokesperson for the group characterized the demolition as unlawful. She maintained that the affected properties were legally acquired and accused businessman Eric Nangwe of using the district lawmaker and the court system to unlawfully orchestrate their eviction. The petitioners further argued that the demolition was carried out without adequate notice, lawful compensation, and transparent communication prior to the destruction of their homes and properties. According to the group, the eviction has resulted in substantial property losses and has caused significant psychological and emotional distress amongst the affected. In a related development, the displaced residents rejected the involvement of the House of Representatives Committees on Claims and Petition, which is chaired by Representative Prince Toll, in addressing their petition. They said their decision stems from what they term as Representative Toll's alleged betrayal and financial misconduct, which they believe contributed to their eviction and demolition of their properties. The Minister of National Defense has reaffirmed government's commitment to a united, coordinated, and proactive approach to national security and regional peace. Geraldine George said, through shared responsibility and common sense, the government will continue to safeguard the nation and secure peaceful future for generations to come. She made a statement when she gave the closing remarks at the 69th Armed Forces Day Symposium organized by the Armed Forces of Liberia in Congo Town Tuesday. For his part, the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of Liberia, Major General Davison Foley, underscored the importance of strengthening bond between the security sector and the civilian population in the collective pursuit of peace, stability, and national development. He noted that the Armed Forces of Liberia remains resolute in its constitutional mandate to defend the nation and work collaboratively with all stakeholders in safeguarding a collective future. The symposium held under the theme Building an Effective Interagency Framework, Combating Drug Trafficking and Organized Crime Through Coordinated National Security Efforts was graced by a cross-section of personalities including diplomats, law enforcement agencies, University of Liberia, faith-based organizations, and members of the Armed Forces of Liberia. Renowned human rights lawyer and political leader of the Liberian People's Party, Councillor Tiawan Gonglo, is calling on the Boakai Kun administration to turn the National Housing Bank building into a public high school. Councillor Gonglo noted that the move will help ease overcrowding in public schools across Montserrado County. Speaking on challenges affecting public schools and students Monday in Monrovia, Councillor Tiawan Gonglo said the initiative, if implemented by the government, will expand access to affordable education for children from low-income families and help address constraints facing the public education system. According to him, the structure, which is currently serving as a temporary shelter for displaced persons and base for the Monrovia City Police, will better serve the educational needs of Liberian children and contribute to educational advancement in Liberia's education sector. Councillor Gonglo emphasized that the building was constructed with taxpayers' money and stressed that ordinary citizens, particularly low-income families, should benefit from its use. He further highlighted difficulties many Liberians have faced in accessing education, noting that transforming the former National Housing Bank into a public high school will help tackle the shortage of such institutions in Monrovia and surrounding areas. The opposition Alternative National Congress political leader Alexander Cummings has denied a long-standing allegations labeling him as a gay. Cummings, who appeared furious over the allegations, described it as politically motivated aimed at damaging his reputation in the Liberian politics. Speaking on OKFM Monday, Mr. Cummings maintained that the claim is part of wider pattern of political propaganda often used during campaigns to distract voters from real national issues. The ANC political leader further mentioned how he has been married for over 42 years. For several years, Alexander Cummings has struggled to clear himself from the speculation of being a gay. During the Monday's radio interview, he accused supporters of the Coalition for Democratic Change and the ruling Unity Party of deliberately spreading the allegation as elections draw closer. Alexander Cummings also criticized the Boakai administration, challenging claims of economic stability, argued that while government officials report economic progress, many ordinary Liberians continue to go to bed hungry. He further questioned the pace and impact of rural rehabilitation and construction, stressing that the bread and butter issues affecting daily survival should be the government's top priority. Looking ahead to 2029 elections, Alexander Cummings highlighted his past humanitarian initiatives across Liberia, including scholarships, medical supplies, and tuition assistance, which he said were driven by goodwill rather than politics. He assured that agriculture, citizen medical supplies will form the core of his agenda if elected. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Richard Cohn, has constituted a committee following a communication from the Liberian Senate aimed at harmonizing the consolidated report of the Joint Public Accounts and Audit Committee on the Central Bank of Liberia. The conference committee, chaired by House's Public Accounts Committee Chair, Representative Clarence Gar, will work with the Liberian Senate on harmonizing the consolidated report of the Joint Public Accounts and Audit Committee of the Central Bank of Liberia. And the Executive Director of At-Risk Youth of the United Methodist Church, Reverend Caleb Doma, has warned that Liberia risks electing a drug abuser as president if the country's growing drug crisis is not urgently addressed. Speaking with King's FM Tuesday, Reverend Doman said millions of Liberian youth have been affected by substance abuse and are reported to languishing in ghettos and graveyards across the country. According to him, the number of at-risk youths in Liberia continues to rise daily, cautioning that failure to adequately tackle the situation could have a serious consequences for the nation's future. Reverend Doma stressed the urgency of curbing the influx and spread of drugs across the country and called on the government to allocate a sufficient portion of the national budget toward combating what he described as a national epidemic.
Sam Juice with the news bulletin. The news bulletin is a regular feature on King's Newsroom. A reminder you're listening to King's Newsroom 45 minutes news about Liberia, Africa, in our one word. Stories we following tonight: dozens of citizens to be displaced Wednesday in 22nd as government enforces demolition in the area to reclaim armed forces of Liberia land, but Moserado County District 5 representative Priscilla Cooper expresses disappointment in call for citizens' fair treatment. Did Finance and Development Planning Minister Gustin Gafuan lied about reversing harmonization? Former Finance Minister Samuel Tuwe says LACC and GSC salaries were never harmonized as claimed by Gafuan. And as in the news tonight is a town mass demolition victims petition National Legislature for intervention accused Moserado County District 8 Representative Prince Thor of taking bribe from businessman Eric Nangbe to enforce demolition. Away from home, Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has hit out at Eritrea's army for committing atrocities during the two-year war in the northern Tigray region, which ended in 2022. Former U.S. President Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State, have agreed to testify in the congressional investigation late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. We'll take a break to be back with voices of the newsmakers. Welcome back and thanks for being there. Moserado County District 5 Representative Priscilla Cooper has expressed total disappointment in the government's handling of these and the second barrack and residents' land issues, which is expected to make dozens of citizens homeless. She expressed the disappointment Tuesday after communication, which called on the plenary of the House of Representatives to cite authorities of the Ministry of National Defense and the Armed Forces of Liberia was dismissed. Addressing reporters, Representative Cooper warned government against downplaying the dignity of citizens in land matters, noting that land issues must be dealt with properly using all procedures to ensure that everyone involved is respected and given good treatment.
My issue is the surrounding paperwork. You understand? We represent people. My responsibility is to ensure the dignity of the landing arm. Equally so, my responsibility is also, the welfare of our people that we represent is paramount. And so the issue of land, we all know what's happening in this country. There are people who are claiming those properties surrounding, portion of the properties surrounding the barrack. And for them, all we need to do is to establish the fact. If it is for private citizen involvement, we want to exercise eminent domain. I'm saying we because I'm part of government. Want to exercise eminent domain, there are steps to follow to exercise so that we take those places. If the places are not for them, there are also steps to follow. Even if someone is on your land, restore some dignity. Don't just judge them off and today is the last day. And so I brought this letter on the floor so that we would call those people involved, from the security apparatus. I understand this is a sensitive issue. And so I wasn't requesting that they come in plenary for open plenary. Call them, we run our committees in this house. Call them in committee room. Just understand the plan of our people is very essential. And so that is missing, and I'm so disappointed. I'm very, very disappointed. And I just spoke with the speaker. He's going to correct whatever mistake he made and make sure the dignity, of our people is restored.
Did he give you any reason how he intend to correct?
It's a sensitive matter, I understand, but it shouldn't have gone away. Give us the opportunity to speak, especially when you represent people. People carry different narratives. And I've been having a couple of meetings, and because I'm not going to the press or not saying anything, so they say like, oh, she doesn't care for us. But when it comes here, we represent these people. The flag need to be spoken on, and that's what we're trying to do. But I hope we will correct the situation and make sure some dignity.
Maserado County District 5 Representative Priscilla Cooper. The Liberian government has since announced that structures believed to be on the properties of the armed forces of Liberia at the 72nd Barracks will be demolished, giving occupants 14 days to vacate the premises in 30th January 19, 2026. Following the announcement, there has been serious concerns about displacement, with residents of the area and activists calling for dialogue and compensation for affected individuals. Meanwhile, thousands of persons have been made displaced across Liberia following that's from 2024 to 2026 through government demolition exercise. Former Finance and Development Planning Minister Samuel Toye has sharply debunked Finance Minister Augustin Gafuan over his recent claims of government of Liberia reversing harmonization for key government institutions. Toye argued that key integrity institutions, specifically the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission and the General Auditing Commission, salaries were never harmonized in the sense implied by Minister Gafuan. According to him, those institutions already operated under a single pay system prior to harmonization reforms, describing the claim as technically flawed and politically misleading. On Monday, during an appearance on an online show hosted by government officials, Minister Gafuan noted that the government has reversed the harmonization of LACC, GAC, Chief Justice, Associate Justices, including judges at the Temple of Justice.
The hearing of the House of Representatives. The purpose of
We sincerely apologize. We'll bring you that in our subsequent newscast. Several victims of this town mass demolition have petitioned the national legislature to urgently intervene in what they described as unfair destruction of their properties following recent court ruling. The demolition, which resulted to the loss of homes, worship centers, businesses, among many others, has sparked major concerns, as many have accused the government of playing blind eye. The affected residents are also accusing Maserado County District 8 Representative Prince Tove of allegedly accepting a bribe from businessman Eric Nangbe to facilitate enforcement of the court's ruling. Reading the petition at the Capitol building on Tuesday, the spokesperson for the group characterized the demolition as unlawful.
tonight of these agreements to ensure transparency, valid. The purpose of this hearing is for the LEC to provide comprehensive details
We, the unassigned citizens and lawful owner occupants of private property located 5th and 4th Street Single Satan, respectfully submit this petition to formally complain about the wrongful and unlawful demolition of our properties carried out on January 31st, 2026 by Aaron Namwe through the order of the court. Background of the matter: that we, the lawful owner occupants of the property, having acquired some through purchase, inherited, lawful occupants supported by valid documents, including these permit, tax receipt, or other legal instrument, that on about some properties were demolished without lawful notice, due process, court order, or adequate competition, contrary to the law, Constitution of the Republic of Liberia. That prior to the demolition, no written notice was served on us. Court order was presented on the same day for demolition. No opportunity to be heard was granted. No resettlement, no compensation plan was communicated. That the demolition have caused us loss of home and businesses, destruction of our personal belongings, financial hardship, psychological and emotional stress, displacement of family, including women and children, and elderly, including our children that were in school, will not go to school because of long distance education. Parent aid tuition, and that children will no longer go to school because of school were broken down. Legal base of our complaint: the action complaint of violation, the Constitution of Liberia, which guarantees the rights of property and due process, established principles of natural justice and fair hearing, relevant land, urban planning, and human rights law. Our prayer relief assault. In view of the foregoing, we humbly pray to our office to investigate the circumstances surrounding the demolition.
The residents of Satan also rejected the involvement of their representative Prince Stowe, who serves as the House's Committee on Claims and Petition, in addressing their petition. They said their decision stems from what they term as Representative Toll's alleged betrayal and financial misconduct, which they believe contributed to their eviction and the demolition of their properties. Highlight of victims of the Satan mass demolition earlier on today when they petitioned the National Legislature. A reminder, you're listening to King's News, Broom 45 minutes news about Liberia, Africa, in our one word. Stories we following tonight: dozens of citizens to be displaced Wednesday in 72nd as government enforces demolition in the area to reclaim armed forces of Liberia land. But Monserrado County District 5 Representative Priscilla Cooper expresses disappointment and call for citizens' fair treatment. The Finance and Development Planning Minister Augustine Gafuan lied about reversing harmonization. Former Finance Minister Samuel Tuer says LACC and GSC salaries were never harmonized as claimed by Gafuan. Town mass demolition victims petition National Legislature for intervention accused Monserrado County District 8 Representative Prince Stowe of taking bribe from businessman Eric Nangbe to enforce the demolition. Away from home, Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has hit out at Eritrea's army for committing atrocities during the 2-year war in the northern Tigray region, which ended in 2022. Former U.S. President Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State, have agreed to testify in a congressional investigation into late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. We'll take a break to be back with more voices. Welcome back and thanks for being there. The Minister of National Defense has reaffirmed government's commitment to a united, coordinated, and proactive approach to national security and regional peace. Minister Geraldine George said through shared responsibility and common purpose, the government will continue to safeguard the nation and secure a peaceful future for generations to come. She made the statement when she gave the closing remarks at the 69th Armed Forces Day Symposium organized by the Armed Forces of Liberia in Congotown on Wednesday.
Liberia values cooperation with ECOWAS, the African Union, the United Nations, and other bilateral partners as we strengthen our collective security efforts. As we move forward, let us ensure that the ideas shared at this symposium translate into lasting actions. We must strengthen coordination mechanisms, invest in capacity building, and institutionalize cooperation across our security sector. Our success will be measured not by species, but by safer communities, stronger institutions, and more secure Liberia. Liberia remains committed to peace, stability, and the rule of law. However, we must also recognize that drug trafficking and organized crime pose growing threat to national security. These crimes exploit our borders, our institutions, and our communities. They weaken governance, they fuel corruption, and they endanger our youth. Addressing this thing is not only a law enforcement responsibility, it is a national security responsibility. Let me conclude by reaffirming the government of Liberia committed to a unified, coordinated, and proactive approach to national issues. Together, through shared responsibility and common purpose, we will continue to safeguard our nation and secure a peaceful future for our generation to come. And that lies with each and every one of us in this room.
For his part, the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of Liberia, Major General Davison Fuller, underscored the importance of strengthening bond between the security and the civilian population in the collective pursuit of peace, stability, and national development. He noted that the AFL remains resolute in its constitutional mandate to defend the nation and work collaboratively with all stakeholders in safeguarding a collective future.
The Armed Forces of Liberia remains resolute in its constitutional mandate to defend the nation and work collaboratively with all stakeholders in safeguarding our collective future. Drugs trafficking, organized crime, and other non-traditional threats do not respect institutional borders. They exploit the gaps, weaken communities, and undermine governance. Confronting them required unity of purpose, seamless coordination, and sustained collaboration across all security sector and civilian institutions. Against this backdrop, today's symposium topic, Building an Effective Inter-Agency Framework, Combating Drugs Trafficking and Organized Crime Through Coordinated National Security Effort, is both timely and strategic. It offers us an opportunity to engage in honest dialogue, share experience, and identify practical measures to strengthen our collective response. Your attention.
Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of Liberia, Major General Davison Fuller. You heard the voice of Minister of National Defense, Geraldine George. Renowned human rights lawyer and political leader of the Liberian People's Party, Councillor Tiawan Gonglo, is calling on the Boakai Kun administration to turn the national House and Bank building into a public high school. Councillor Gonglo noted that the move will help ease overcrowding in public schools across Monserrado County. Speaking on challenges affecting public schools and students Monday in Monrovia, Councillor Gonglo said the initiative, if implemented by the national government, will expand access to affordable education for children from low-income families and help address constraints facing the public education system.
There is no government high school in Central Monrovia. I'm therefore calling upon the president to think out of the box, to use this building that was meant for housing bank. There's no housing bank there. The people's money was used to construct this building. It is occupied by displaced people and city police have been there. The more useful way of the government using this building is to put a school there. There is a school on the block called Monrovia Central High School. I'm calling upon the government to reopen Monrovia Central High School and put it here. This building can hold thousands of poor people children to go to high school. That is what government should do. That's the best way of using this building. The Monrovia Central High School was first opened under Talbot and Charlotte Talbot. George turned it to Monrovia Central High School and was being operated in private building. The last building was operated in is the building that is now being used by Codex, former Total, as its headquarters down Bush quarter. But here is a building. The best use for this building is to.
Councillor Tier 1 Gongo, they're speaking. Opposition Alternative National Congress political leader Alexander Cummings has denied the long-standing allegations labeling him as a gay. Cummings, who appeared furious over the allegations, described it as politically motivated, aimed at damaging his reputation in the Liberian border politics. Speaking on OKFM Monday, Cummings maintained that the claim is part of a wider pattern of political propaganda, often used during campaigns to distract voters from real national issues.
So I'm going to maybe use an abusive word on your program. Sorry.
No, please.
And I'll use it again. I had to say that, but now I will say BS maybe to clean it up a bit. But it's complete nonsense. We just talked about Teresa and I, marriage over 40 plus years, children, grandchildren. I talk about my Christian values, growing up in a Christian home, my father, Episcopal priest. That is just complete nonsense. It's political. The guy who started making up that stuff, and then I'll talk about the parts of it, but the guy who made it and started to push it was a seditious, right? And so the CDC pushed it, but UP pushed it even more. It comes up kind of political season is when they use it. And I always say it's a kind of the political class, the people that benefit Liberia from the way it is today and don't want it to change. They use that kind of spurious, sickening act in politics that has bothered me more than that accusation. Because politics is politics. People make up stuff. I won't use the other word I use. But it's complete nonsense, complete BS.
ANC political leader Alexander Cummings. The executive director of Outbreaks Youth of the United Methodist Church, Reverend Caleb Doma, has warned that Liberia risks electing a drug user as president if the country's growing drug crisis is not urgently addressed. Speaking with King's News Tuesday, Reverend Doma said millions of Liberian youths have been affected by substance abuse and are reportedly languishing in ghettos and graveyards across the country.
We got about 1 million plus people on drugs. 70% of the population is young people. We need to find a way to direct 70% of our resources to developing 70% of our population. If 20% of that 70 is dying before our very eyes, we have to preserve 20% of the 70% of the resources to keep them alive. What am I saying? Drugs is killing us. Drug is killing our future right before us. It's supposed to be a pandemic. We're supposed to tackle it with some urgency. Unless we do that, we are in trouble. I want you to think about this. With the population, more than 1 million people on drugs, we are going closer and closer to the place where we will elect a drug law as president. Because if 1 million people vote for one person, this is what will happen.
Executive Director of Outbreaks Youth of the United Methodist Church, Reverend Caleb Dorman. Away from home, Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has hit out at Eritrea's army for committing atrocities during the two-year war in the northern Tigray region, which ended in 2022. Eritrean forces fought alongside the Ethiopian army against local Tigrayan fighters for control of Tigray, which bulldoze Eritrea. In an address to parliament, Abiy admitted for the first time that Eritrean troops had massacred people in Ascom. Allegations Eritrea had previously denied following reports of mass killings that took place in the historic city over 2 years or 2 days in November 2020. And former U.S. President Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State, have agreed to testify in a congressional investigation into late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. It comes days before a vote on whether to hold the couple in criminal contempt for refusing to appear before the House Oversight Committee after a month-long standoff. Bill Clinton was acquainted with Epstein, who died in prison in 2019, but has denied knowledge of his sex offending and says he cut off contact 2 decades ago. Former President Clinton will appear for a deposition on 27 February, and former Secretary Clinton will appeal on 26 February. Well, on that note, that's how we come to the end of this edition of King's Newsroom. But before we go, a quick reminder of stories we followed in the headlines. Dozens of citizens to be displaced Wednesday in Sandasekan as government enforces demolition in the area to reclaim armed forces of Liberia land. But Monserrado County District 5 Representative Priscilla Cooper expresses disappointment and call for citizens' fair treatment. The Finance and Development Planning Minister Gustin Gaffwan lied about reversing harmonization. Former Finance Minister Samuel Twes says LACC and GSC salaries were never harmonized, as claimed by Gaffwan. You also heard in the news a town mass demolition victims petition National Legislature for intervention, accuses Monserrado County District 8 Representative Prince Tor of taking bribe from businessman Eric Nangbe to enforce the demolition. Away from home, Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has hit out at Eritrea's army for committing atrocities during the two-year war in the northern Tigray region, which ended in 2022. Former U.S. President Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State, have agreed to testify in a congressional investigation into late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Many thanks to our reporters, correspondents, and all those who help in making this edition of King's Newsroom a success. Sam Andrews brought you the news bulletin. Frank Diallo Swen Sada control and handled the technical aspect of this edition. On behalf of the team, I'm Shema Dale. I presented. Thanks for listening and watching.